this. I think we control the controllables. Fever general manager Amber Cox said, "You are start prepping for obviously the college season, for what's going on internationally, planning out our scouting." Now, it sounds like they are introducing a scouting department for overseas players. Now, from my understanding, they did not have an overseas scouting department. Now, both domestically and internationally, we are talking to all players, doing exit interviews, obviously focus on developmental plans to finding out what their needs are and how we can support them. So really, just focus on what we can control, and as things roll out, we'll be ready to go. The biggest thing planned.
Something huge is brewing in Indiana. Something that could change not just a franchise, but the entire future of women's basketball. For months, the Indiana Fever have been silent. No wild trade rumors, no flashy free agent signings, no viral headlines. Just quiet. But behind that silence, a plan has been forming. A plan that could either transform the Fever into the WNBA's next dynasty, or destroy everything Caitlin Clark has worked for. It starts with 3 simple words. Control the controllables. That's the motto Amber Cox, the Fever's general manager, has been living by since stepping into the most pressure-packed job in the league. On paper, it sounds calm, rational, but when you're running a franchise that's been drowning for nearly a decade, it's a mantra that borders on desperation. Because when the world expects you to build a contender around the most hyped rookie in basketball history, and you've only got 3 players under contract, there's no room for mistakes. Amber Cox inherited chaos, a broken roster, a fan base on edge, and a superstar whose patience might already be wearing thin. But she also inherited something else. Opportunity. A clean slate. The chance to rewrite Indiana's legacy and finally turn the Caitlin Clark era into more than just a marketing phenomenon. But this story isn't about hype. It's about survival and what happens when one front office decides to bet everything on a plan the rest of the league doesn't even see coming. When Cox took over, the Fever's reputation was simple. A team built on potential that never turned into performance. Year after year, they drafted talent that fizzled, hired coaches who couldn't last, and fell just short of becoming relevant again. But that's exactly what makes Cox's strategy so...
The biggest storyline going into this offseason is going to be Caitlin Clark, Indiana Fever 2026 team. How is they going to build this team to be a super team? I told you, I'm sick of playing. We need to damn near solidify us a championship. We need to be up there with the likes of the Las Vegas Aces, the New York Liberty. We need superstars on this team. I'm tired of mediocre role players. We need to build around our 4 core pieces we already got and surround.
Fascinating. While everyone else in the league was reacting, she was building quietly in the shadows. Her first move wasn't flashy. It wasn't even publicized at first. She built a brand new international scouting department, something the Fever had never had in their entire history. For most teams, that's routine. But for Indiana, it was revolutionary. For years, the Fever's vision never stretched beyond the NCAA. They focused on domestic talent, players who shined in March Madness, names that sold tickets. But as the rest of the WNBA began pulling in seasoned veterans from Europe and Asia, Indiana was left behind. Cox wasn't about to make that mistake again. She knew that the next great Fever star might not come from Iowa or Yukon. She might come from Istanbul, from Madrid, from Prague. Players who faced Olympic pressure, who've won titles overseas, who don't flinch under the lights, and that's the first sign that something serious is shifting in Indiana while the rest of the league waits for the new CBA, expansion drafts, and 1,000 rule changes that could flip the WNBA upside down. Amber Cox is moving ahead anyway. She's scouting, recruiting, and planning like the old rules still apply because she believes that real winners prepare no matter what chaos is coming. But that chaos? It's closer than anyone thinks. In a few months, the WNBA will enter one of the most unpredictable off-seasons in history. 2 new teams, one in Portland, one in Toronto, will be added to the league. That means a double expansion draft where every team will lose players they can't protect. And for the Fever, that's a nightmare. Because right now, they've only got 3 guaranteed players: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Dawana Donis. Everyone else? Up in the air. And just to make things worse, There's the looming expiration of the Collective Bargaining Agreement, the CBA. That document controls everything from player salaries to contract rules to who teams can core or protect from free agency. And guess what? The entire thing expires on Halloween night, which means nobody, not even Cox, knows what the rules of the league will be next season. Imagine trying to build a house when you don't even know if you'll have a foundation next week. That's where the Fever are right now, but here's the difference. Amber Cox isn't panicking. She's doing the opposite. She's playing chess while the rest of the league is stuck in checkers. She knows that expansion drafts aren't just about who you lose. They're about who you gain. Because when two new teams form, every front office gets desperate. They overpay, they overreact, they let talent slip. And that's when Cox plans to strike. Still, the biggest question hovering over Indiana has nothing to do with contracts or draft boards. It has everything to do with one person, Caitlin Clark. When Clark entered the WNBA, she was supposed to be the savior. The golden child. The player who would bring record crowds, sell jerseys, and make people care about the WNBA again. And she did for a while. Every game was an event. Every shot she took went viral. But now, things have changed. Clark's season ended with frustration, exhaustion, criticism, and questions about whether the league itself had protected her. She took more hits than anyone else in the WNBA, both physically and publicly. Some fans turned on her. Some teammates struggled to adjust. And slowly, the magic started to fade. Ticket sales dipped. Jersey numbers slowed. And for the first time since she arrived, the conversation wasn't about her next highlight. It was about her future. Would she stay loyal to Indiana if the team kept losing? Would she chase championships somewhere else? These are the questions that keep Amber Cox awake at night. Because she knows if Caitlin Clark walks, Indiana's not just losing a player. They're losing their entire identity. That's why this plan matters so much. That's why every move Cox makes between now and next season could decide whether the Fever become contenders or a cautionary tale. Because the truth is, we've seen this movie before. LeBron James in Cleveland, Kevin Durant in Oklahoma City, Anthony Davis in New Orleans. Generational talents trapped in small markets, carrying teams that couldn't keep up. Eventually they left. And the franchises they left behind? They still haven't recovered. Amber Cox knows that history. She studied it. And she's determined not to let it repeat itself. But the question is, can she actually pull it off? Because the blueprint she's building is bold. Almost reckless. It involves going international. Rebuilding the bench, taking calculated gambles in free agency, and reimagining how the Fever play around Clark's skill set. She's not trying to build a team for today. She's building one for 2026 when all the uncertainty clears and the league finally resets under the new CBA. And if it works, it could change everything. But if it fails, the Caitlin Clark era could end before it ever truly begins. Asterisk, what Amber Cox is doing right now goes against everything the WNBA has done for years. While most general managers look to the college draft for their next superstar, Cox is looking overseas, hunting for veterans who have already been through the fire. Players who've battled in European leagues, faced Olympic pressure, and learned how to win on the world's biggest stages. Because there's a quiet truth in professional basketball that few people talk about. The best players in the world aren't always in the WNBA. Some of them are in Turkey, Spain, France, even Russia. Women who've been dominating leagues for years, making more money overseas than they could ever make at home. And Cox wants them in Indiana. To make that happen. She's rebuilding the Fever's entire scouting infrastructure from scratch. For the first time ever, Indiana now has a global scouting network. Analysts tracking international tournaments. Advanced metrics from EuroLeague play and regional scouts with deep connections to overseas clubs. It's the kind of system championship teams have, not rebuilding ones. And that's exactly the point, because Cox isn't trying to keep up with the lead. She's trying to leap past it. In the WNBA, teams have to think creatively. The salary cap is tight. Superstars take up huge chunks of payroll. That means if you can find undervalued players abroad, players who can start at an all-star level for half the price, you win twice. You get talent and flexibility. That's the foundation of Cox's entire plan, and it's not just theory. Look at what Las Vegas did. Before their championship runs, they didn't just collect stars. They built around role players who could win, shooters, defenders, high IQ veterans who knew how to make the system work. Indiana wants to follow that blueprint, but on a tighter budget and with a riskier approach. Because when you start recruiting overseas, you're not just scouting talent. You're scouting character. Cox knows that the Fever can't afford locker room drama. They need professionals. Players who don't care about the spotlight, who care about winning. The kind of women who've been doing it for years in front of crowds half the size and under pressure twice as high. She's betting that those are the pieces that will finally unlock Caitlin Clark-Dott for most of Clark's rookie season. She was asked to play in a system that didn't fit her. She's a natural floor general, a visionary passer who thrives with movement, spacing, and teammates who understand how to cut, screen, and shoot in rhythm. Instead, she was surrounded by mismatched pieces, players learning on the fly, often standing still while she tried to create everything on her own. It was exhausting to watch, and it was even harder to play through. That's why Cox's next move is all about fit. Not just talent, she wants shooters who can move without the ball, defenders who can switch, and bigs who can run the floor. She's not chasing names. She's chasing chemistry, and that's something that's been missing from Indiana for years, but there's a problem, and it's a big one.